got Sara Abu Zahra today.
Finally, Basel Meets. This has actually been going on for 12 years now,
Yeah,
15 years. How long is Basel Meets an official
I
slogan?
mean, the brand
Yeah.
is 12 years old, I guess. I don't know. But we should probably set some context.
2006.
2011.
Really?
That's when we did Basel Meets.
Was
guess
that the
it's
first time you met James Hetfield? 2000? No, it was
13.
way before.
No, 13.
Okay.
You know, I know. I mean, it's an anniversary for me.
Yeah.
It's you know,
I think that was around then.
for that. So just to build some context, of course, Sara Abu Zahra. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I'm not going to do that for you. But I'm going to tell you how I know you. We've known each other for a very long time, but you've kind of built an amazing career throughout all these years, and I think there's a lot of great insights that we can talk about today. But how you and I know each other, well, not really know each other, but something impactful that we've done together actually is a lot to do with this podcast, and that is the name Basel Meets. And how that started was, I don't think I've shared this story on the podcast before, but
nice.
But just for the sake of people listening,
people should know how Basel Meets started to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in 2011, Metallica were coming to Abu Dhabi.
I remember this, and this was just the rise of social media.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you and I were talking, and I was telling you how I am the worthy person to meet Metallica because I've been a fan since I was 15 or 14 years old. And I was like, Sara, I have to meet Metallica. And he said, well, why don't we start an online campaign? Why don't we just tweet and say, let's meet Metallica? And I believe you and I think my friend Rami Zahran as well was with us.
Rami was there. We were in a bar drinking tea.
Yes, drinking tea in a bar. Yeah, it was very cool.
Didn't look sketchy at all.
Super cool. And I believe you were the first one to tag it. You said, Basel, he's the only guy who should be meeting Metallica. # Basel meets Metallica. And from the next day, it started snowballing. You, your friends, my friends, and it started snowballing until that day, it became a trending topic in the UAE. # Basel meets Metallica. And what the funny thing is that they had OMD, which is one of the biggest media agencies in the region, had an event that day. It was called OMD Predicts.
Yeah.
And it was, and we dethroned them, and they were like the #1 trending topic on Twitter that day. And we have dethroned them as the top trending Twitter. And I'm sure a lot of people were pissed that day. Who is this guy who wants to meet Metallica, who's now the #1 trending topic?
I remember this.
In Dubai.
This grew like a wildfire, actually, on social media. I remember it being picked up on the newspapers, on the radios back in the day. That was a big deal.
That's right.
And I remember actually sitting, I'll also shamefully throw Starcom in there.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a case study just built out of Basel
Were you with Starcom back then?
Back then, yeah.
Oh,
I was.
okay.
Just after that, yeah.
Interesting.
It became a case study of how this person who literally didn't have any connections to Metallica at the time managed to create this whole ecosystem to get him to meet Basel Meets, to get him to meet Metallica. Yeah. But actually the whole world, the whole UAE and Dubai and Abu Dhabi were trying to help you get to meet Metallica.
That was nuts.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
That was
James
pretty nuts.
Hetfield specifically.
Yes.
And it happened.
That's the takeaway.
Happened.
It happened. I got a call from, I remember it lasted 3 weeks, and we were like, and I remember...
wow, that was it?
Yeah.
It only took us 3 weeks?
It was 3 weeks.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, in the world of social media, that's an eternity, if you think about it. And I remember we always got close, and then we would get like struck down, and every time we got struck down, it gets more powerful. More people would chime in, and then I started getting people from all over the region kind of telling me like, okay, you have to do it, Kaza, until it culminated in me actually getting a call from Do Telecom.
I remember.
They do not sponsor this podcast right now, but if they do want to sponsor this podcast, this is the time. And they told me, we're giving you the passes to meet Metallica, and I was super happy, and I got to meet Metallica, and I met James, Lars, Kirk, and Rob.
I think the whole entire UAE was really excited about you meeting this.
Everybody was rooting for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
It was pretty nuts because no one got anything
Even
out of it.
OMD predicts at some point.
Even OMD was like, we're with him.
Yeah.
So that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
Well, we've known each other before that, but
Yeah.
but that's like kind of the big thing that we've done together.
Yeah.
And I think like years later, I started Basil Meets, and because I felt like I liked meeting people and talking to people and stuff like that.
You have a great passion and knack for it, which is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then obviously you and I, we've stayed in touch, and you've built a stellar career. And in the world of content creators, and I always used to actually ask you for your advice on Basil Meets, and you gave me some opportunities when you were at Facebook. So now I think I'm throwing it back to you.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
What have I been since?
I mean,
MENA,
since all I know. So back then you were at Starcom. So you were very much into you were in agencies back then.
Yeah.
And building brand propositions and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me, what were you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I can start like earlier in the career. So basically, in a nutshell, I very much started in the production world. So I studied business, like many people who were young in the Middle East. We didn't really know what we wanted to do in our lives and in our career. So, we took sometimes maybe the easy way out. So I went into college studying business because nobody really explained to me what the career opportunities were.
Were you in AUB or?
I was in AUB.
Okay.
It was the easiest thing to do to get a degree, but also have fun and party. I didn't party much. I played a lot of video games.
Oh,
but
interesting.
Yeah, I did.
Lebanon. So you're in Beirut.
I was in Beirut. So yeah, graduated from college. I ended up in production, and then from there, a lot of things led to another. I was always very interested in the content world, in the production world, and just in the whole content ecosystem. And as the world progressed, I managed to progress with it. So I started in production, and then moved on to agency world, from production in agencies, as well as media agencies, and then with the evolution of content from just content to branded content to tech. That's how my career also progressed. So
you said you were telling me once that something happened.
Yeah.
Where you worked on a set.
Yeah.
So tell me that story. What set were you working on, and what happened that made you want to take a path into the world of content creators and stuff like that?
So a little bit of context here is just, being a Middle Easterner and growing up and being raised here, a lot of things I've noticed was, how we were always portrayed. Just starting from, a young age when I would watch, wake up, stay up till late at night and watch, on TV, Hollywood and Bollywood movies. And those were really amazing. But they always represented, the West or Bollywood, but nothing really represented us as Arabs. And that always stuck with me. Another thing that really stuck with me growing up was how, the news, how we were as Arabs always portrayed on the news. So, we would watch as young kids here, we would watch our Arab Middle Eastern news, and we would see what's happening in our part of the world and our story and how that's evolving, and how badly it's impacting the Middle East and the people. And then when I would switch to, let's say, another Western news station, I would always see a very different side of Arabs being, the antagonists or being the problem, and that also stuck with me. And I'd always go up to my family and say, like, why are there so different in terms of what's being said and how it's being portrayed? And I remember my parents saying, that's part of the problem, and they always tried to keep me away from that, but that really stuck with me. And then going back to what you were saying, as I, these two stories always stuck with me. And then as I grew up, I remember being invited to finally to work on a Hollywood movie in the UAE. This was back in 2006.
Which one was it?
And I was really excited. The Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
So it was with Universal Studios. I was, just come out of college. I was extremely excited to work on a Hollywood set. I mean, that never happened in 2006 here. And then I get onto the set because I was so excited I actually didn't read the script. And then I find out I'm in a movie in the Arab world that represents Arabs as the antagonists again.
So it's exactly what
we were exactly, and we were, we looked like, the bad people every time. And that always triggered me and stuck with me. And I thought that was the last time I thought to myself, I think that's the last time I ever want to be in a situation where we are portrayed in a negative light. And this is essentially why I do what I do today. So today I work with content creators and publishers and any type of creator in the region to help them be able to tell our stories Arab stories, Middle Eastern stories in a more positive light, but in a more accurate light of what this region is. And I think that's, the beauty of technology today and social media, and that's what drives me today to do what I do. So having anyone from their house, their room, where they live, be able to pick up a camera and tell their stories to the rest of the world, and be able to drive a more positive light or more accurate light, and people can say that from anywhere, is really what's bringing more understanding to the world. And you see that a lot today on all the platforms. And I think that's the beauty of platforms. Of course, all these platforms have advantages and disadvantages, but ideally we focus on what the positives are, and continue to get people to be able to tell their stories and get people to understand different cultures and stories and what's happening all together. And I think a very good example of that is what's happening on the ground today with Gaza, and how people are now beginning to understand what's been happening for so many years. And people never had the opportunity to see that because they were always opening their own media stations, and being able to have all these different perspectives is really important for people to understand the world a lot better and bring the world to a better understanding and together.
Interesting.
So that's my trajectory, and that's how it all started.
Well, that's definitely. I think there's something I want to unpack. So you're saying that day on the set, or I guess it was whatever that time you spent on the set, that was something that changed your perception on what you wanted. So this was what? This was how many years ago was this? I mean,
this was in 2006, but it was definitely a buildup of things. Seeing things as a child in terms of how we're being portrayed in the media. That definitely stuck with me. And then you at that time you just feel hopeless. You don't really know what you can change, because you're really it's you against all these big media entities. There's nothing you can do as a child, or nothing you think you can actually change as a person, right? But and then 2006. I mean, the caveat to that, the movie has a kind of a silver lining, which is, at the end of the movie, it's like an eye for an eye, a toe for a toe. No one will ever get anywhere. So that's kind of the silver lining of it. But still, nevertheless, there's always that Arab being the problem, the Middle Easterner being the problem, versus actually, if we dig a little bit deeper, that's, these things are much more complex in that sense. And, there are many more reasons as to why these things are happening today. And people really need to dig and find out the truth.
I find that super interesting in a sense that, I think I've always been mindful of how Arabs are portrayed on media. Okay, I think I've seen the evolution of it throughout the years, especially obviously in Western media and stuff like this. And I think there's several reasons why it has evolved and it has changed. I think in the beginning, back in 2006, let's say 2006 to just before the blow up of YouTube and social media, narrative was very much controlled, by 2 or 3 major corporations. Whether it's NBC or whether it's Universal or whoever it is, right? Whatever. So narrative was super controlled. I think what happened was, I think 2 things happened. This is my theory, and tell me what you think. Number one, millennials grew up, and I think people didn't take into account what millennials will do once they grow up, you know? And I think what millennials did was they actively changed that narrative. The second thing is, and I think this goes hand in hand with the millennials growing up, is social media exploded. So when social media exploded, everybody had, it became democratized, you know what I mean? The message became democratized. So you have people like you, people like me, kind of, and all the content creators that you work with now have a platform, and they can talk and they can represent themselves. And I think that bridge between that world and the world today, which is now ruled by Gen Z, TikTok, that kind of saw a major shift and a major evolution in the narrative, right? And I think we see it a lot today. And, I think I was looking at TikTok, and the let's say, Palestinian sentiment on TikTok is very large because of what I explained. I think this is my theory. Of course, this could be absolute nonsense, but this is my theory.
I completely agree with you. Just to generalize a little bit, I do believe that, the the millennials were kind of the stepping stone in being able to, go from, not having a platform to having a platform and speaking. And that really set the stage in terms of, how you communicate, the fact that you from any part of the world can communicate to the rest of the world. And I think that really opened up a lot of eyes to, the impact that you can have as a person. And I think that's really amazing. And then as millennials, we're also in that place where we want change, but we were also in a place where we always fear. We worked out of fear because of the things we were taught growing up.
Yeah.
Gen Z don't necessarily have the same fears that we do about speaking up. And I think this is where these two kind of generations, to your point, really helped each other. So millennials setting the stage of, what you can do as a creator and how you can grow on platforms and leverage them to be able to tell your stories. And then the Gen Zs who are really not as afraid as we are to speak up, that, are really able to blast any form of communication within limits of things that are important to them. And I think those two together, I mean, this ecosystem of, all these creators, not just here, the rest, like the world in its entirety is really creating all of these changes from, anything from citizen reporting to, reporting what's happening on the ground in war-torn places and Gaza to, just reporting who we are as our identity is really creating so much value to get people to understand who we are and to give them a more positive light and more accurate light of who Arabs are and who Middle Easterns are and how we live.
I think it also gave birth to a new industry. So two industries, I would say. One is the creator industry, which you obviously, I call you the queen of the creators.
That's very way too kind.
We'll get into that. And two is the new media industry. We're talking, you and I were talking about Augustus Media and, internationally you got Vice and BuzzFeed, and regardless of how they're doing, but it gave birth to that industry. And again, you see it full of these millennials and the Gen Zers who are actually now the anchors. They're no longer the just the audience, you know. But going to creators, I think that's the most interesting one for me. I want to see something, though, before we get into that, with about the platforms. So I have a lot of ideas here, but I'm going to try to choose. I'm going to try to choose. First, I want to talk about language. Okay. Before, I think the conventional wisdom is that if you want to make it in this region, talk in Arabic. Okay. I feel like that's no longer the case, and I'll tell you why I think that is. Netflix changed this conventional wisdom. Why? Because you watched, or maybe not you, but anybody would have watched Casa de Papel. There you go.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Would you have ever thought of watching a Spanish movie?
Not really.
Show?
To be honest, most of the time when I do watch that dubbed, I often forget that it's a dubbed movie.
Yeah.
Like I get carried away thinking it's English. Then I actually have to remember that, actually it's slightly out of sync because it's actually not an English movie.
Oh, interesting. So you watch it dubbed?
I do watch it dubbed.
Interesting. So a lot of people watch it actually
in Spanish.
In Spanish with the thingy.
No, I'm too lazy.
The captions.
It's like I don't want to read and watch at the same time.
But also, what's the other one? The big Korean one that came out. You know which one I'm talking about?
Squid Games.
Squid Games. There you go. That was the biggest Netflix hit in the world, and it was in Korean. You know. So the conventional wisdom of you have to speak the local language, I feel no longer applies. But I would like to hear your thoughts on this.
It's a good point. To be honest, I never really gave it too much thought, but just, kind of thinking about what you're saying now, I think you're actually right. I think in the past, we always used to tell people as, being at Facebook and Instagram in the past and at Snapchat, most of the time, the language you speak in helps you transcend to specific audiences. So initially, it was if you spoke in English, you're able to speak to a more global audience. If you spoke in Arabic, you're only able to speak to Arab community, etc. And that was very much based on the idea of who's your target audience and who do you want to speak to. But I think you're actually right. So today, I think all these platforms and all these AI technologies and tools have made it so easy for you to be able to recreate this content in so many different languages that it just makes it so much easier for people to, if they're interested in that specific creator or in that specific topic, etc., to be able to, cater to a wider audience and still be very authentic to who you are as a creator, let's say as an Arabic creator. just through the use of AI tools to be able to translate that to other people. Because the reality is, a lot of the times you see people trying to speak in English, and it sometimes they lose the audience because of that. But I think, to your point, I do think these language enablers and AI technology and being able to speak in your mother tongue, in a sense, and being able to have that kind of translated to the world does add a lot of value.
It makes you a superstar in your community. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, I get it.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's a population that speaks Arabic first. So if you want to grow that particular audience, then it makes sense. You want to do that. But the thing is, because we're talking about Gen Zers and millennials and platforms, but also I think I've told you this before. Every night I spend about 20 minutes to 30 minutes on TikTok. Okay. It makes me,
I know I get a lot of your videos. Yeah, you send me every other day, which are great. I love that.
Thank you.
It's always inspiring.
Do you want me to stop?
No, I love it. I always tell you this. I think one of the things that I love about
so you don't roll your eyes when
no, I get inspired. I mean, I think one of the things, I know we've always had this conversation, and we always have tried to find ways to work together, and inshallah one day we will. But one of the things I absolutely love about you as a character is. And your entrepreneur kind of journey is there's two sides of you, and I think we're kind of similar in that sense. There's one side of you that is completely irrational and a dreamer, and when people hear you talk, they think you're absolutely crazy, and I think that's amazing and it's brilliant. And I think the yang to that is you also have a side to you that's a bit more rational, that says, okay, I did my dreaming, but now what can I actually do? And I think that kind of combination in you is very unique. So when you do send me these videos,
thank you.
I do love and I enjoy them.
The Gemini in me, the two-sided. No, but we'll get into entrepreneurship. Yeah. But I think on TikTok, what I'm saying is that I spend 20 minutes on TikTok each night, and the reason I do that is because I feel that's the best window into understanding the creator universe.
Yeah.
And by that I mean is that the conventional wisdom of, very properly shot, very properly, it's got to be in Arabic, it's got to be this, got to be that. That's all shattered on TikTok. TikTok almost made up, they broke the rules and remade the rules again. Yeah. And so what I see is, yes, some creators speak in Arabic or whatever the local language is, but also I see a lot of creators speaking in English. I see a lot of creators singing in English. I see a lot of creators not doing this professionally, just doing their phone and just a little light and using the in-app stuff to make it work. I see a lot of younger creators bringing joy to the platform, whether it's singing or telling jokes or doing skits.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating that TikTok kind of rebuilt something completely different from what other platforms are doing. In fact, I started seeing other platforms copying what they are doing in hopes to bring in the same type of creator, the same type of audience. Yeah. You're in this creator universe, and I want to know what you think about this.
Yeah, I think what TikTok brought is truly unique. I think one of the first kind of aha moments for me was the fact that, during COVID, I think that's when I started to, kind of lean into the app a little bit more, because we all had a little bit more time.
Yes.
And I think one of the aha moments for me was just sitting in bed and just flipping through the videos, and then my first aha moment was, oh my goodness, everybody is dancing to the same exact song, but everybody is in a different part of the world. Like, I would see someone from China dancing to a Western song, but the same dance. Someone in the Middle East, someone in France, in the US, in Germany, and that was the moment I was like, oh my goodness. Everybody does not speak the same language, but everybody was dancing the same language of dance. And that's what kind of brought everybody together. And that was my first, wow, this is more powerful than we think.
Interesting. I didn't think of it that way. That's
yeah, and I thought that was really incredible to see that, everybody's from all walks of, life and this planet, but everybody was dancing the exact same language. And I thought that was really interesting, but everybody gave it a twist at some point. And then TikTok evolved, of course, where people were able to share more about who they are, their passions, what's important to them, and this whole diversity of all this content that is available. It kind of moved away from those, shiny images where you have to create this shiny content to be able to deliver great content. That's not the case. That really comes down to, it really shows you that really the secret kind of recipe or sauce to success is, you as a person and a creator or an aspiring creator. How do you, find your passion? how do you create content with purpose that adds value to people. And if you're able to just deliver it, it doesn't have to be in the shiniest way, but if you're able to deliver it in the right way, then really that's all it takes to be able to be a successful creator. Obviously, there's a lot of little nuances that you need to take into account to optimize, but really just creating something that you're passionate about, you're persistent about, and really adds value is really a great way to start as a creator, and to be able to drive value to yourself and to the world, and to be able to share your knowledge. So yeah,
you've worked with a lot of creators.
Yeah.
Okay.
As have you.
I have.
Yes.
But you've worked with the OGs. You work with the big ones. Do you find a certain level of, let's say, a common denominator between all of them? So, like, you've met, obviously, the biggest of the biggest, right? Like, you've worked with Huda to Khaled to Ma Baraf Min, Mo, Kaza. Do you find, like, a common thread between all of them? Like, there's that one thing that you need to have in order for you to become like them. Obviously, the people you work with are not like your run-of-the-mill 50,000 follower guy. Like, you're working with people who have million plus followers, right? So
in the millions, but as well as the people who are up and coming because they really have,
like me, for example.
You're on your way
2,000 people following.
You're on your way up. So, with both, I mean, you also have the smaller creators that have a lot of potential, and they just need a little bit of support. I think one of the biggest common denominators I've seen is just a few of them is one, this person is so convinced and has so much passion for what they're doing, and they see nothing else. I think that's the first one.
Interesting.
And they're so sure, so they know what their passion is, and is very much aligned with their purpose. And sometimes, by the way, that takes a little bit of like understanding the direction when you want to go in, but you got to tweak it a little bit. It's not always 100%. And that tweaking is really good, and fine tuning where you want to go. So passion and purpose is probably the underlying kind of key ingredient to creators really building success. The other one is persistence. I think that's the biggest one I've seen, where this can either make you or break you as a creator. Be it you have a purpose and a passion or not, actually. So a lot of the times people will keep going, and then at some point just give up. And I think that is the point in time where you're actually, like, to keep going is one of the most important things. So one of the tips I would really tell people is, don't be dismayed if you don't see results immediately. You really need to learn how it works. So every video you put out there today really gives you a lot of real-time insights of what's working, what's not. So really take advantage of, those insights. Like, when are people watching? Did you give people a hook at the beginning? Did you engage them throughout? And then did you give them, a delivery at the end? And all these apps today give you so much insight to, like, at what point in time do people drop off? So really take all of that in and continue to get that to drive you. So persistence is really key for you to be able to continue to go. So I'd really tell these creators, like, don't give up. If you've already started, you've done 90% of the job or 80% of the job. Just keep going, and you will get there. You will have that break, but you just have to keep going and keep tweaking and keep learning, and learn from the people around you. I think that's also key. And finally, the last one is just understanding how these platforms work today. So today, a lot of these platforms pivot to new products. My tip to everyone is, the moment any platform is pivoting to a new product, give that product a shot, because they're going to boost that into the algorithm. So just understand how these works. Work on what you do. Jump on trends as well. That helps some of the times. But you got to stay true to the content that you're doing. And just keep learning in the process. There are obviously best practices that you need to follow to optimize your content as well. But if I'm really to summarize it, it would be purpose, passion, and persistence is really one of the key ingredients.
It's very interesting.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Ask a very, very very workable feedback. You know what I mean? Like, I could definitely use that.
You've even done this yourself. I mean, you at some point, we started in 2011, and that was just like a trigger of your passion, and then you started this in maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's something like that. Well, yeah.
And now you're back, and I think this is going to be your big break.
Yeah, hopefully.
This is just the beginning. I mean, you've had some major people on your podcast already.
It was nice.
You've had Slash.
I have Sara Abu Zahra on.
You had Joel.
Joel.
You had Raed as well.
I had Ramzi Raed as
some
well.
Big people.
Yeah. Look, I mean, for me, it's first of all, it's the joy of doing this.
Yeah.
You know, having a conversation with someone and just
you're always
talking.
Quite the chatty person. Yeah.
I'm very chatty. Yeah.
I think this is perfect for you.
I think even all my clients know this. Like, oh my God, he talks a lot.
I think you spoke about podcasts 10 years ago.
I feel like I feel like that's something. A lot of people told me you should go on radio. You should be a radio guy because you talk a lot and you have the voice for it. And
I told you that 30 minutes ago.
You just told me that 30 minutes ago, so I'm using it in the podcast. But I want to. So you were talking about persistence, compassion, talking about, and I think that's all amazing. I have a question about the platforms. So you worked at the platforms, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're a platform, lady, if you will. So you worked with you were at Meta. You worked on Instagram. You brought creators onto Instagram and onto Facebook. How do you see that? A lot of people used to come and complain about the algorithm. I don't know, Sara. I feel like the algorithm is not pushing me as this, it's and that. It's not what it used to be, and blah blah blah. What can you what can you reveal about the algorithm? And I'm sure it's changed since then because obviously you went to Snap after, but and I know Snap probably operates completely differently from that. But if you talk about the platforms and how the platforms actually respond to the creators, and maybe bring some of that Snapchat in there as well.
So I no longer work at any of them.
Yeah, I know. So now you can talk about it as much as you want.
About it from like an outsider perspective.
Right.
I think one of the things, that's public information as well, and it's valid, is really just to understand how these platform algorithms work is really key for you to be able to create the right to be able to grow your audience, right? And that really comes down to, let's separate, let's assume generic content, and that really comes down to how you're creating your content. And how you're implementing best practice. So today, as platforms evolved initially from images to video, the minute you pivot to video, you're already being boosted. So the first thing I would say is really try to understand where these platforms are going to begin with, and then double down on those. So if Instagram pivoted to Reels, then you pivot to Reels, and then you mix it up between Reels, images, etc. I think they're also going back and forth on images as well. So
and stories.
And stories, exactly.
Because that's the biggest reach, I think, on the platform, right?
At the moment, I'm not sure. I think
it was probably Reels, actually. Yeah.
I don't know what the division is at the moment.
I think it's Reels. Accurate. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I've been testing. I've been testing with my content, and the biggest lesson I've learned over the past, releasing schedules that I had, is that if you have a strong hook in the beginning. Exactly. And you're telling an interesting story, then it's likely that people will stick to the piece of content and maybe share it as well. And the last episode I did with Ramzi Raed, I put a story out about how he sat when I was an intern. He sat with me and we had a conversation and that kind of thing.
It's a great story.
And I didn't expect at all that story would pick up. And not only on Reels but also on TikTok.
Yeah.
It really picked up, and I put nothing behind it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't put any boosted or anything. It just kind of exploded. So anyway, that's my thinking.
Actually, you actually nailed it. So it's really how you create your content in terms of how do you create an engaging hook where people are kind of reeled in and they want to listen and they want to know what it's about. So that's really the hook. And then the mid chunk of it is how do you keep people engaged from the beginning all the way to the end. So keep them informed, keep them entertained, and then how do you deliver value at the end. And obviously things that are meaningful to them, that add value, that are emotional, of course, really, really drive that. And probably that story really added a very emotional element to, the intern actually sitting with, the big CEO at the time. And
a lot of people who used to work with me at the time started commenting oh my God, he's amazing. You're right. He's a legend. He's the OG,
a lot of sentimental value behind it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did you, working with creators, did you feel, or not feel, but, okay, so we talked about the common denominator. You talked about the success metrics. this is maybe out of left field. You don't have to talk about it,
Yeah.
but did you have to do crisis management with creators? So like, did you have? You don't have to mention names,
Yeah.
but did you have a time where like somebody called you like, "Oh my God, Sara, it's all going down. It's burning. It's my career is over," and you had to like calm down. Here's what we're gonna do. Like, did you have to deal with
There's a lot of crisis management. I think one of the things people assume is that creators are having a good time all the time just because of the content they post. But a lot of the times, working with creators, you really see the harder side, the tougher side that they live with. So a lot of them are, not sure of, the content they're creating. A lot of them get a lot of backlash, which is really tough because, a lot of the creators do things with the right intent. And sometimes that's either misconstrued or misinterpreted or just disagreed with. But, the creator, it's not that easy to be a creator in this community and this part of the world because people really have a lot of things to say and sometimes a lot of negative things to say. So yeah, you see a lot. You see a lot when it comes to creators really trying to understand if they're in the right path or not. Them struggling with their own work-life balance in a way. And they're struggling with all of this kind of, sometimes backlash that they get with them, assuming they do the right things or, just believing in whatever they believe in. And then you also have other circumstances where, things are a little trickier on when it comes to platform policies and things like that. And, that's another story in itself. But yes.
But when you say the darker side of it, do you mean that the amount of work that's being done? Do you mean that so what does it take? Like, okay, we see it, like, you're right, we see what they post, but what does it take in the back end? And how hard is it, I guess? How hard is it to become a creator like this? And we're not, again, I'm talking about like, the million plus people who got there. Because a lot of people look at these guys and they say, man, this guy made it, and I want to be that guy or that girl. And that's the kind of life I want to live. And,
those creators are truly very committed. So they wake up, they have, one of the things actually as a tip is building this content calendar. You have a content calendar of, exactly what you're going to be doing. Well, at least you have a calendar of, what you aspire to be doing, over the next month, over the next year, etc., depending on how you build your planning. But, they wake up, they're creating content from morning to night. They don't switch off, right? So basically their day job is their night job, and it doesn't stop. It starts from, you wake up, you've done all the planning. You're shooting the video for a few hours. You're going back. You're editing it. You have a team who are editing it. You're putting it. You're uploading it. You're now uploading it not just on one platform but multiple platforms. And then you're also cutting it up for multiple platforms. You're creating stories for multiple platforms. And then you're getting all. You put that out there and you think you're done, but you're not, because now you have all the comments and the feedback and taking that all in, and that's a big. Every part of the job they do is quite taxing and emotional, because from the production to the editing to the comments they receive, so all of that is in essence their day, and it doesn't end. And most of these creators are basically working from the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep. But that's also a generator of their success sometimes. But I mean, a lot of the time you have to try to tell creators that they do need to take a break and switch off, and stop the doom scrolling sometimes, and do take a mental break. I've had a time where I've worked with one specific creator who I absolutely love, and this guy was super dedicated. Actually, I can mention Khaled Al Ameri. He's an incredible content creator, and the way Khaled specifically started, I remember, is he was very dedicated to create his content and grow, and his ambition was to tell Middle Eastern stories to the rest of the world, and he really achieved that. I mean, his audiences are spread across the US, the UK, Europe, the rest of the world, and the Arab world, and as well as India, Pakistan. So it's really incredible what he's built. But when he first started, Khaled actually created, and you can see that on his platform on Facebook at the time, he actually created a video every single day.
Wow. For
over 400 days, if I remember correctly. And by the end of it, I think he was exhausted and he was run down. And naturally, I mean, you're literally waking up every day, filming a video every day, editing it every day, And I think at that time he was almost doing a lot of it on his own.
Every single day.
And waking up, answering all the comments. Khaled used to respond to all of
I
a lot of
remember,
his
yeah.
friends and do it every single day. And then I remember Khaled walking into the office and I said, Khaled, you don't look okay. He's like, I'm exhausted. I was like, naturally. I mean, and then, he had this plan, and that's what's amazing is he reinvented. He's like, you know what, I'm actually gonna change my strategy here a little bit, and instead of creating a video every single day, because what happened was he stretched himself so thin that he wasn't able to focus on what type of content he wanted to create. Is he built the schedule of, actually, I'm just gonna create 3 videos a week, and this is gonna be the plan. And he was able to focus on that a lot more. And with that kind of balance, it was more the quality versus the quantity.
Right.
Even though all the videos he really created were really great, but he was really able to double down on the quality of it and amplify that a lot more. And it grew, and his page continued to grow, and he continued to grow across all the platforms.
Damn.
So yeah.
Wow. Every single day for 400 days.
He did that for a really long time. But I mean, he's grown so much.
He has grown so much.
He's doing an amazing job.
And did he take acting lessons? Do you know that, or he's really good?
I actually don't know if he's taken acting lessons, but I know Khaled's always loved to do, he always loved The Office, and that was always kind of a benchmark for him.
Okay.
I mean, you should bring Khaled.
I messaged him the other day. I told him, like, I want to genuinely tell you that I find your content hilarious. Like, honestly,
really
just
incredible.
out of like.
Yeah, he's really continues to upskill himself, which is really amazing. And that's something else, actually. Like, how do you continue to grow yourself from 0 to 1 and then 1+, and continue to evolve yourself as a creator? Is something creators, should really think about. And it's amazing to see a lot of the creators start to do that. Yeah. What's your experience been with, the podcast, working with creators?
I think it was a little bit, I think with podcasts, approaching creators with podcasts was a little bit easier than the conventional way. The reason is, when we started with Rising Giants, there wasn't many podcast networks out there.
Yeah.
Second is, a lot of people didn't know how to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And a lot of these creators found that this is a different avenue for them to create content. So, and it's different. It's different from their day-to-day content, right? So somebody like Khaled, for example, has a very strict sort of regiment of how to create. It's scripted, it's sketched, it's acted. Whereas with podcasts, it was more free flow. It was more them just sitting down with friends and talking and that kind of thing. And they knew this was a new avenue for them to create content, So I think for us, it was easier to kind of work with these creators. Also, I found, and I think this is my experience, that the more personable you are as a person, the easier it is to gain the trust of people around you. So, I'll be more precise here. So, me and my partner at the time, Bashar, we
heard a lot about.
He's a great guy. We were ourselves with people. You know what I mean? We didn't come and approach them as companies.
Yeah.
We're like, we are a company and we're gonna make you a lot of money. We didn't do that at all.
Yeah. We
came in. We said, we're passionate guys. We love podcasts. We know podcasts. You're awesome. You have a lot to say. Let's help you say it. And that actually got us, I think, our biggest win, which was Joelle. And at the time, Joelle was being pitched by several companies.
I watched that, and I remember she said that you pitched the idea of a podcast to her many years ago.
Yeah.
And she wasn't sure of it at the time.
Yeah.
So
it's funny. I think sometimes you just have to shoot your shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Joelle Mardinian is a huge celebrity, right? By all measures. She's 20 million plus people following her, businesswoman. She's on NBC. She's the whole thing, right? And then you have to shoot your shot. You know that she's being approached by 101 people to do 101 things. But then, if you kind of work on your pitch and you come in with a pure intention, I really think that. I think come in with a pure intention. Be who you are. Be yourself. Don't act like you're somebody else. Be who you are. I am Bassett, and this is who I am. I'm not going to pretend I'm somebody else. And pitch from that perspective, from that angle, and I think you will get somewhere, And I think with her, it worked. She saw the genuinity of us as guys who are trying to be entrepreneurial, who are trying to build something. And I think in her character, she likes to help entrepreneurs. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's just who she is. You know, obviously some people like they're not like that.
Yeah,
They just don't care.
It's quite clear.
But with Joelle, she's like that. And you know, that worked out because I think she saw that genuine nature about us, you know. But not just her. I think there's others. Like, we work with Mustafa Al-Agha, we work with smaller creators as well, from Mace to others. And I think it's just, we use a consistent method of be yourself. I know that this is such generic advice, but honestly, just be who you are. Be a human being, you know, just because we're talking as people here. Win their trust. And after that's established, then, you know, see what you can build together, you know, and make sure that they know that I've got their best interest in mind as well. You know, it's not just for me. This should work for both of us, you know. And if it's just one-sided, then it's not going to work for either of us, you know. So I think that's been my experience with them. I've never treated the creator as a celebrity. I've treated them as just another person that I meet. Like, I meet you, I meet Sara, I meet whoever, and that's the same to me. Like, it's not, there's no difference. Just because you have X amount of followers or you have X amount of money or whatever, I'm not going to treat you differently from, you know, Jenna outside at reception. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same. I think that's such a powerful tool to have, because then no one is intimidating to you. You know what I mean? If we're all people, we all wake up in the morning, we all have our coffee and our breakfast, and you know, if that's the guiding principle, then you should be comfortable working with anybody and whoever. I
think one of the great things about podcasts as well is it kind of strips down the act they have to put on a camera. They're still in front of a camera, but they have to kind of strip that down, and they actually have the opportunity to be able to communicate who they really are.
True.
And I think that's something that's quite beautiful in a sense, because they always have to, you know, act or put on a bit of an act, or not necessarily act, but, you know, entertain and or inform or do something in some form of way.
Because you're a character when you go on your social media. You're a character.
Absolutely.
But on a podcast, in some way, you are more yourself on a podcast, because you're really bearing yourself out there.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think it's a great way and an opportunity for them to really be able to communicate who they really are, what they really want to communicate in a more honest and, to your point, a truthful manner.
Yeah.
So I do love, you know, this direction of podcasts, because you really get to see a new kind of side to all of these creators of, you know, they do one thing, and that's kind of, you know, their passion or their job or whatever it is, but, you know, there is this other side that you should really know about who they are.
I think it's interesting. The podcasting world in particular is interesting. I mean, look, it exploded over the past couple of years. Yeah. And the biggest example is Thamania, right? In Saudi Arabia, they're doing amazing things. Amazing work, you know. And you see a lot of people trying to copy what they do, you know. And that's great. That's the greatest form of flattery, you know. Everybody's trying to copy Thamania. But the thing is, I would say also, as a guy who started a podcast company, that the whole ecosystem has changed. I wouldn't recommend you start a podcast company, you know, like, because unless you do it as an MCN, which is a multi-channel network, just for those who don't know what that is. In a sense, what I mean is a lot of the individual podcasters are now really gaining momentum, and they're really growing and that kind of thing. And look, there are some podcast networks that are doing super well, like Thamania, like Salt, like Mike's. But I feel if I would start from scratch today, I wouldn't do it as a podcast network as what RGN was. I think I would do it a bit differently.
What would you do different?
I would first of all, I would diversify the type of content. Like, we were very focused on audio, and now I would diversify that more to video, because obviously we live in a region, well, not just a region, I think globally, there's a lot of people just like to watch things, you know. That's one. Two, I think you see how a lot of people consume podcasts now is that they cut down podcasts into, you know, small little snippets, and they put them on TikTok and Reels and that kind of thing. And that's actually how a lot of people consume podcasts today. So having that, you know, that mentality of video is as important as audio is super important, you know. Joe Rogan said it. He said, I have as many viewers as I have listeners.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of listeners, you know. So that's super important. Number two is, I would find people who are kind of not established, but let's say up and coming, and bring them into the fold and kind of help them develop their shows. And others who already have their shows as well, but don't know how to monetize and don't know how to build and that kind of thing. So I would look at those as well to build kind of that type of podcast network, or let's say content network. And the key is, I would say content as well is very important, is understanding how to develop IPs on these platforms that you're talking about, you know. And what kind of IPs can we build that not only does content for the IP itself, but also houses some of the content of the podcasters you're working with to put on those IPs as well. I think that's kind of how I would maybe how I would rebuild.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine to share your ideas to the world. It's fine to go build it if you can do it, but that's, I think, how I would look at it. But I have to ask you, so since you've obviously worked with all these creators and you've seen this world and you've seen economically how rewarding it is, right? Like it's I've worked with creators before, and I've seen how much money they've been making.
Yeah.
So maybe I want you to talk a bit about the economic side of it.
Yeah.
Okay. But also, I want to start focusing, or let's say, shifting our conversation towards yourself. Seeing all of that, has that inspired you to do something? And you saw this world and that kind of thing. There's something about anxiety I want to talk about, but we'll get to it. But there's a lot to talk about.
All right.
So yeah, economically. So
economically, So your question is economically in what?
So how when you look at that creator ecosystem, and you've seen how much money they're making, first of all, how sustainable is it?
Yeah.
Number one, and two, does it help you think about how to apply that to yourself? How do you feel like? How do I want to build something that's different from what's happening right now? That's kind of
absolutely. So just to unpack it a little bit, I think the creator ecosystem is ever evolving and ever growing, and as we all already know, the globally, the value of the creator ecosystem is valued at around $250 billion.
Wow.
And estimated to grow to $250 billion by 2027, according to Goldman Sachs. So it's ever growing and ever evolving. I think one of the interesting things about this ecosystem is initially in the past, we all know that a lot of this budget has come from TV and print, and then and has moved into the digital ecosystem, particularly into the creator world. Here, I think it's grown in the Middle East by 46%, in the digital economy specifically. This will continue to grow. I think one of the interesting things I've seen over the past few years is initially it was a few select creators, and they were always the big top creators. And I think over time this evolved as well, because you do have those big creators and they're amazing. They do amazing work. They're the pioneers. But also you also have the smaller creators that are also being able to build a healthy and sustainable ecosystem for themselves on these platforms. Through this economy, and the reason they do well is for several things. They create great content. They are key opinion leaders in that specific niche kind of audience, and they have high conversions. Regardless of them being smaller creators compared to the mega influencers and creators.
Interesting.
And I
so it's more beneficial to go with the smaller ones versus the bigger ones.
It's different. I think it depends on what your objective is. If it's scale, then obviously you go with the bigger creators and of course positioning, and then if you're also a smaller brand, smaller creators or big brands, smaller creators are just as impactful in different ways. And I think a combination is always very healthy, because they are just as impactful in their own way, depending on what your goals and objectives are. I think the industry is going to continue to grow. I think here in the region we have, I don't know, maybe 200 to 300,000 creators in the region. And I think what's happening today is the Middle Eastern creators they find it a lot easier today to get on a camera and speak and tell their story and be able to express themselves a lot more. I see this as, ever evolving, continuing to grow. I do see a marketplace happening where you will have a lot more, where you have smaller brands being able to speak to other creators who are also maybe smaller or larger, and being able to create a more, a lot of these platforms are trying to create these marketplaces, but they're all very, separate and individual. And, I think there will be a world where you can create something where, I hear this a lot, where you will have this ecosystem where people can speak to each other and create brand collabs a lot easier. So I do see this being powered a lot easier and being able to grow this ecosystem a lot faster.
So I'm seeing Sara telling me you have to end soon, but I have two things I want to cover before we end anything. First, I want to talk before we go into yourself and how you see yourself in this ecosystem. It seems like every creator is a business. Okay, like the way you describe it, it seems like running your own business. And your product is yourself. Your product is your videos, and your product is your content. From my experience, that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of anxiety. That's a lot of like, am I making money? Am I not making? Am I succeeding or whatever? Do you see that as a common thing with creators? Like there's that level of stress, especially the ones who are like really hard at work. And
I can't remember what the stat is. I think it was about 4%, but don't quote me. But yeah, I mean, the majority of the revenue is made by, the top 4% of the creators. So there definitely is that stress of, how do you...
That's it, just 4%?
I believe so. I need to double check that. But yeah, I think, there is definitely that stress. I mean, as a growing and up-and-coming creator, you obviously have a day job most of the time.
Yeah.
And, the aspiration of most of these creators is to be able to create a healthy ecosystem for themselves, to be able to, focus on that 100%. So it's definitely, a stressful, situation. Some creators have really, taken the plunge and they've quit their day jobs to do this. And that in that sense could be a really stressful situation for them to be in. And you have to be really sure and very committed. So yeah, I mean, definitely there's a lot of stress on these creators. They are building themselves as a business. And, this is their bread and butter for them. So yeah, that comes with a lot of opportunity, but a lot of challenges at the same time.
Yeah. So early on, you found your purpose, like you could say back in 2006, 2007, you're working on the set, you found your purpose. And then it shot you in this trajectory.
Yeah.
You weren't in creators first. You were working with agencies first.
Yeah.
And then you found yourself in this world of creators through the platforms, which is, I guess, a perfect world to be in if you want to be in this world. So you've left all that behind you now, and you're trying to figure out your place in all of this. How do you don't have to give details, obviously, but from what you've learned, and I guess, what is the biggest thing that you've learned from your time with Facebook and Snap and working with creators? And two, how do you feel you would build on that?
Yeah.
If anything.
Yeah. So just to go back to the first part. Yeah, I think that life of agency and the creator world really taught me, like the agency or the content world taught me the content piece, and then I was able to kind of implement that onto the creator piece. I think my kind of trajectory will always be in the creator and content ecosystem. For me, I'm very passionate about the region and how we're portrayed and how we can change that narrative. I'm very passionate about people and communities and being able for them to enable them to grow, tell their stories, and tell stories particularly from this part of the world. So a lot of creators with purpose. So moving forward, that's pretty much the direction I'm probably going to stay in, either doing my own thing or finding ways to continue to work with creators either behind the scenes or, possibly be one of those narrators as well.
Would you like to be a creator yourself?
I think it's an interesting, again, you have to have the skin to do it. I really don't think it's very easy. And a lot of creators make it look easy, but it's challenging. But I feel like I have, being, watching, all these creators grow, go through their journeys and really build themselves. It gives you a lot, it educates you a lot on, the good stuff and the challenges they go through. And at the end of the day, they are really soft humans on the inside, and people forget that. So yeah, true. I do think
because when you say something like "oh, you suck" or something, and you don't know that you're actually talking to a person.
Or you just say anything, but sometimes that little thing is could hit some an insecurity. And that could be really tough. So absolutely, yeah, I do believe there's an opportunity there, and having gone through the journey with so many people, I do think there's an opportunity to grow myself as well, and be able to tell stories from this part of the world. But I do genuinely enjoy and love working with creators and helping them grow, build the community, and I think that's something I'll continue to do. And I love seeing all these people grow and be successful, tell great stories, more importantly. And the whole industry in the region is just investing so much in content, in the infrastructure, and in creators. So I think it's the right direction to go in.
Damn. Yeah, because it seems like you're very comfortable with this world. Like when you're talking to me, I feel like I'm learning a lot as we speak, you know, and it seems like you have a lot of insights about this world. It is very interesting. And I think about myself as well. And it's tough, you know, you want to be a creator, but what does that mean? You know, like what kind of creator do you want to be? And I look at, the ecosystem in the US. Not that I have any experience in it, but I see that, if you're focused on a certain vertical, you do super well. Like MKBHD, you know what that is? So he's like the biggest tech YouTuber. He literally, he reviewed a car called the Fisker Ocean.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that car.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with myself. I actually know that car.
It's the Fisker Ocean.
I didn't think I would.
So it's an electric car, and he reviews electric cars to show you the power of creators.
Yeah.
And he said it was the worst car he's ever driven.
Wow.
Okay. And so MKBHD, he doesn't like sugarcoat. He just he said it was the worst car he's ever driven.
That stock went down.
From then, the company has been in shambles. It's been going down the drain. They've been calling him to kind of re-review the car. And it's so close to bankruptcy.
Wow.
You know, he did another review. He said, I don't know if I can recommend it, you know, but it is improved because they sent him an improved version of the car. I say I don't know if I can recommend it, but just to show you the power of this one guy, one man, who sits in his loft in New York, and he just did a review of this one car, and the whole company plummeted because of the influence that he has. Yeah. And honestly,
he's built himself credibility in that one,
just that one thing in tech.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I always say, like, I love like phones and stuff. Like, I love tech stuff. So I always wait for MKBHD's review. It's the only review that matters to me.
Really?
You know what I mean? Like, I see all these.
What do you wait
reviews.
for in particular?
Just I want to know what he says about like the iPhone or the let's say I'm between an iPhone or a Samsung, for example, and I want to know which one I want to get this year. And
it's incredible.
And he would say like this, and that, and I would recommend this, not recommend that. Boom, whatever he says, I'm like, it's not me being a drone or anything like that. It's just I trust him so much. He's built so much credibility in his space that it's kind of incredible what he does.
I think you nailed it. This credibility piece is also a big part of this equation.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, he's put his passion and his credibility, and there you have you waiting to find out what he says next. I always use him as examples.
Do you have a creator that you look at and you're like, boom, that's the creme de la creme. That's the example.
You know, it's interesting. It's different creators for different things.
It could be international, by the way. It doesn't have to be.
But I think one thing I've noticed actually is in the past, I would focus specifically on one creator. So on specific platforms, I would focus specifically on specific creators. But on other platforms, so let's say on Instagram, Snap, I would probably focus on specific creators and follow those specific creators. But what I've noticed is my behavior is a little bit different on TikTok. My behavior on TikTok is not necessarily following those creators, but waiting for the algorithm to feed me what it knows I'm looking for within that category. So I'm not necessarily following the creators.
It's true.
I'm following the topic. And I think that's what I've noticed, what my behavior is different on some platforms versus others. Yeah. And then sometimes I try to tell the algorithm, this is what I'm looking for. Yeah. So I go in and I search, or I keep like spending more time on certain things. So I just feed me more of this.
That's interesting because TikTok at that is amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
Like the algorithm of TikTok is phenomenal.
Yeah. One thing I do have to say about algorithms, again, this is my perception, my own personal opinion, is what TikTok gives me is different opinions. So if I'm looking at something, I get a lot of different opinions about that specific topic.
Interesting.
In other places, I feel like it might fuel a specific one opinion. I could be wrong. I think that's just my personal kind of assessment of what I've been getting on specific platforms.
Interesting. Very interesting. There's a lot of creator stuff that we spoke about. It's so that's such an interesting. I didn't even know it was that interesting to me. But there you go. It's very, very interesting.
That's great.
I use the word interesting a lot. So look, I think fascinating stuff. I'm very excited to see what you do next.
I'm excited to be doing some cool things with you next too.
You
we'll
never
have
know.
you on my podcast very soon.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say is I feel like the anomaly to all of this is Joe Rogan.
Yes.
Not that I like you know, I feel like I've evolved a bit from there, but he, I feel, breaks every single rule that we spoke about. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll tell you.
Which ones?
Well, no, actually, not really, because I think it actually aligns so much with what you said. Because it is passion, it is perseverance, it is persistence, it's all that, definitely. And he said that. But I mean, like, he doesn't stick to one thing. You know what I mean? He talks about 1,000,001 things on his podcast. Yeah. And he's amassed an audience that likes to listen to the huge variations that he talks about on his show. Also, what's interesting about him is that he has this whole other thing, which is he's a stand-up comic, and he has this whole other thing is that he's a UFC commentator. Yeah. So he's amassed 3 different audiences who don't interact with each other. It's incredible.
You're right. He is an anomaly, and I think he's, you know, there's some people who are just really good at more than one thing. Yeah. And you know, it's all about creation and the state of flow. And I think some people are really good at, you know, whatever they're passionate about, to continue to create and flow and build. And I think that's what Joe Rogan is really, really good at. I think it's also all about experimentation, right? So I think being able to kind of diversify into many different, you know, genres and worlds, and seeing, you know, what works better on 2 fronts, right? What works better for the audiences, but also what, you know, he's more passionate about. And I think finding that sweet spot is interesting. But it's amazing that you do have creators like that. And I actually think you'll have a lot more coming down the line where, you know, people have more than one passion or more than one story to tell, and you will have a lot of that. And I think that's also the dynamic of having a podcast versus who you are as a creator as well, because you do have those different, you know, sides or sides to the coin or story.
You know, at some point I attempted to start a sneaker YouTube.
I was just going to ask, what would be your non-podcast
it's so interesting because I attempted to start a sneaker YouTube. Yeah. And I used to unbox sneakers and stuff like that. And it was, it was a very expensive hobby to have, you know. But I truly enjoed collecting sneakers. Yeah. So I thought this would be something fun to do. Shot. Yeah, I feel like I kind of grew out of it. Now. Yeah, that's one. And 2 is I kind of grew out of it. It served me a purpose in my life. I don't know what it was, but I kind of needed something at some point. I felt like I was so all over the place. And then when I found my love for sneakers, I started just focusing on that only. It's a bad focus, but it was fun for me. And because of that, I started watching YouTube channels of sneaker heads, and it started indirectly affecting how I dress. I know it's weird. And then
I could see that happen.
And then it started affecting how I would eat. Funnily enough, because I want to dress nice. Your shoes dirty. So, I mean, I'm not a slobber eater. I mean, some would argue that I am, but because I wanted to fit in the clothes, I wanted to look nice for my sneakers, you know. So I started eating better. I started working out more.
Oh wow, that's
funny, right? Like there's a whole thing that worked.
That's deep.
That's deep.
Yeah, that's
something
really
there like that. Yeah. I need to see a psychiatrist or a therapist or something.
Keep buying sneakers if you know.
That's what I thought. Yeah. I should get into sneakers again.
I think it's a good investment after all.
Well, it actually led me to to the idea of focusing. That's what I wanted to get to. The idea of focusing on one thing that you enjoy. Yeah. Led me to podcasts. Okay, so obviously there was nothing there with the sneaker world that I was going to build, but at the same time, in parallel, I started listening to podcasts, and then I started Bass and Meats, and I told myself that's the only thing I was going to be focusing on. That's it, the podcast, you know. And obviously that led into me starting RGN, and obviously moving on from RGN, and here we are again, full circle. But I think focusing on that one thing kind of helped build that circle. Funnily enough, it started from sneakers, and here we are.
It's incredible. It's always one thing that leads to the other in a way, right? And you always have to take back. It's always when you get kind of to the other side or the other end, you actually kind of come to a self-realization of, oh, that's why this happened, or that's how these building blocks came together, which is really truly incredible. Yeah. when you get to self-reflect and see how all of that, kind of comes together.
I would love to have you again. This was so
yeah, me too. There's so much more.
Yeah. We could keep going. We could keep but that would kill me. But no, thank you so much for your time. I know we've been working.
No, it's been amazing. Thank you. I've never said yes to a podcast. So
there you go. Your first podcast.
Said it. Yeah.
Now I'm going to see you on 10 other podcasts.
I mean,
let's sign an exclusivity clause, like at least for 2 weeks. Let's release this thing.
This is the first one I actually said yes to. So
I'm sure a lot of people will be very interested to know what you have to say. You're kind of
it's been amazing to do this with you. I mean, you let things flow, and you have so much excitement, the rational and the irrational.
Very excited.
So it's been great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but I would say the interesting about you is you've kind of silently built your brand, and I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's one to observe because you've built it due to your association with the creators and stuff like that, but you've also put yourself out there in the middle of that messaging, and you put it very subtly. I think like you don't go out there like, hey guys, my name is Sara, how you doing? Like you don't do that, which is interesting. But it built this mystery around you actually.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never got that.
People not tell you that?
No, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, there is a mystery around you. And I think that's what makes you, I think, very interesting to have on a podcast, because you've built all these creators, you've built with these platforms, but you've never truly came out yourself and talked about your experience and how you want to build and how you see the system, the ecosystem and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You probably did it in private with people, but
we could probably talk about that as well on the next podcast. But yeah, absolutely. I've always not put myself too much in the limelight.
True.
But maybe more things to come soon.
Although I would see you with other creators as well. Like I would see you with Huda or whoever, like I would see you on their,
Khaled.
Yeah. I'm using it on first name basis. I don't know any of these people. But
I mean, I think the beauty of being able to work with all these creators is you're really trying to build trust, and I think that's like you actually said it. You're going in with passion and you're going in with trust, and you also have their best interests.
Yeah.
And I think these are the most important things, because a lot of these creators, because of the fame they're in, they also don't necessarily. They get sidetracked from so many different things, and being able to build that and really finding ways to support them in the right ways is really important.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, actually. I think a lot of the stuff I want to do next has a lot to do with seeing all these creators go through their journeys, and me go through my journey, and being able to communicate, for example, about mental health. Or
with them,
it could be with them, but it's more about just talking about mental health in general, be it with I think creators is a very good element to that, of how they go through their journey specifically, but in general, like this is a community that goes through a lot when it comes to mental health, well-being, things like that, and kind of surfacing that to the limelight, which a lot of the time used to be a very taboo topic here.
Do you ever feel that? I know I keep going, but do you ever feel like because of all that...
Is this not going to give us a hard time?
Probably. The cameras are still rolling, right? Do you ever feel that you're carrying a lot of people's weight when they come to you and they tell you things and stuff like that? Do you feel like I'm carrying a lot of this weight and I want to just I want to just snap out of it. I just want to stop.
I never thought about that, actually. Are
we having a therapy session?
I think so.
Okay,
wow, this is like... I didn't think about that. No, I enjoy it. And I think because I enjoy it, it kind of works for me, because a lot of the times I, seeing them, on screen and then seeing them in person and then having these like more, private conversations with them really shows you how much they're struggling, but how much they're, always trying to support their audiences, please their audiences, do the right thing.
And they're human.
And they're human, of course, not AIs just yet. I think it's a bit of a you do take a bit of it on, because you do have to focus on the creator a lot. But I think it's a part of the job I used to enjoy a lot, because it is good to be there for people who are the heroic character for a lot of people, but at the same time they're very fragile as well, and in a good way, by the way, because they're always trying to focus on doing the right content, doing the right thing, growing, and that pressure is really high. So having the opportunity to be privy to that, and seeing the other side of that is something to be humble about. But you get to learn a lot in the process from them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Thank
That's it.
you
I'm
so much for
put a
having
fork
me on
in
this podcast. Thank you, Isra, for hosting us. And
Did I tell you about the
keep sending
مسخن
us
that I
stuff.
made?
No.
I didn't.
You made him مسخن?
Oh my God.
Completely on your own?
Let me tell you about the مسخن.
Yeah. When did you do this? Was it after the iftar we had
Look,
at yours with your
me tell you
wife, or
something.
before? Because we
I'm
didn't hear
gonna-
about this sooner.
I'm gonna tell you about the مسخن that I made.
Are we still recording?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The world needs to know.
Tell me.
So I've been craving مسخن
When
for
was
the
this?
longest
This
time.
year?
Just last week.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've been craving
I'm not too
مسخن.
far away from your house.
I had to
Yeah,
test it first.
okay.
I don't want to give you bad مسخن.
We'll be there for round 2.
Good مسخن.
Yeah.
So I've been wanting مسخن for the longest time. Okay. And I looked up 10 different recipes.
Oh.
And then I decided that.
Is this the creator you sent me?
Did I send you a creator?
Yeah,
for
you
مسخن?
did. No, you sent me a creator who cooks. But
Oh yeah. Okay. Probably. And I did it.
yeah.
And
Wow.
did you know that مسخن, the onions are actually boiled in olive oil?
No, I didn't know
Sara
that.
has nothing to say to this. It's
No,
like,
I had
okay.
no idea.
It was
So
amazing.
not in water, in olive oil.
And
Just
no,
pure olive oil?
just pure olive oil, and just boil it,
Wow.
and it was so good when at the end of it.
That sounds really
Even
like
Dana,
deadly.
who doesn't eat bad food,
Yeah.
told me that was the best مسخن she's
Really?
ever had.
That is impressive.
Honestly, it
Yeah.
was the best مسخن I ever had.
Who'd
too.
you get the recipe from?
It's now a secret. now, it has
Now it's
become-
a secret. Okay.
Now it has become a secret.
Now I gotta go through my
Gonna seal it.
videos.
So here's what we're gonna do, Sara.
Yeah.
We're gonna start a مسخن place
I love that.
in Jumeirah.
Okay.
It's gonna be a hole in the wall.
A creator مسخن place.
Create a مسخن
Yeah,
place.
I like that.
So it's gonna be a place where
Podcast
creators can do,
مسخن.
and then there's مسخن on the side, and we're gonna do fresh bread.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's gonna make us millions.
That sounds epic. I would be there. I would show up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe
you
we'll
like
do
مسخن?
like a kerek pop-up. I love مسخن.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that's
So
how we can make
مسخن,
our money back.
I would say karak after مسخن is
Yeah.
just the ideal thing.
I agree. I
Why
think
even
we
work on creators? Honestly, there's two مسخن.
just invite a few there.
Did I tell you about
You
the
be good?
مسخن? Okay, I guess we're done.
I really want to try it though.
Thank you.